to the Home Assistant podcast. My name is Phil, and joining me as always is Rohan. How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thank you. And joining us from Romania this week is Marius. How's it going?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And so you've done a lot of work with the Lovelace documentation, so we're excited to hear all about that coming up soon too. So the release this week is 0.75, nice round number. And as usual, there's some new platforms to start off with. And this week, some more Tuya integrations. They've added in climate, fans, and covers. So if you're using Tuya, which I'm hoping I'm pronouncing correctly, you can now support those as well.
So next we have Tahoma smoke sensors. There's more integration into Home Assistant with this. So I guess the idea is, if something goes off, you can start making some automations around it.
I really like smoke sensors in Home Assistant. I think that's a really cool integration to have.
Yeah, I have my Nest Protects in here actually, and yeah, it's great.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's right. I remember when they added in the color codes. You were excited about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Also added in is Brunt, the blind engines. Now you can control those with Home Assistant. Blinds are really cool to automate. I can't wait to automate my blinds.
Yeah, that's actually pretty neat. So I guess this is one I haven't heard of. So because I was looking at blind controllers or like cover controllers, whatever, a while ago, and couldn't really find a whole lot. So there's a couple, but that's neat. Good to know that there's another one. There's also the Spider thermostat, or SPIDER. Yeah, so another thermostat added to the platform as well.
And power plugs as well.
Yeah, and the power plugs. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think they're a Netherlands-based sort of smart home company, so that's cool. P5 Future Now lights have been also added in. So another light component. I'm a big fan of more light components being added in, so bring them on.
Yep. Also, magic seaweed sensors. So I'd be lying if I said I knew what this was before this, before this release came out. But it actually seems kind of cool. So it's weather and ocean data, hence the name's Magic Seaweed. But it also sounds like a little bit of a trip. But yeah, like it's. So now that's brought in. So I guess if you're doing anything where you need that kind of stuff, so for example, surfing, you can get yourself an API key and pop it in here.
When I first skimmed the release notes for this week and I saw Magic Seaweed, I thought, oh yeah, it's just another like Kickstarter or something that's come up with a simple name that could be anything. I didn't realize, but it actually makes sense that it's a surf sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually another one with a very simple name, I guess, is the Genie Aladdin Connect Garage Door Open. If you have a garage door and you use the Genie Aladdin Connect system, you can now open, maybe not close, depending if you're using the Amazon Echo or not, your garage doors with that Connect system.
Yeah. Lastly, in this new release, so this is actually pretty cool. So the three of us were talking about this before the episode recorded, is the Sisyphus. So if you're not familiar with this is basically, I guess I don't know if it's still in the Kickstarter stage or it's not. I think it's out of Kickstarter already, but it looks like they were funded pretty quickly. But it's a table with sand in it that draws patterns by itself. It's got lights underneath. It's got a media player component attachment with Home Assistant, but the end result is actually pretty cool. So it's like a coffee table it's like a coffee table plus, I think they call them Buddha boards, but there's a little ball in here that basically moves around and makes shapes in the sands automatically. Yeah, like it's so you can just add a bunch of tables in here if you have those. It's just super cool. I didn't know this existed either.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like it's, as I said, like Home Assistant keeps adding new components and my shopping list keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I believe the metal version starts at about $1,300 for a coffee table or a side table. And if you want to go the all wooden version, you're looking at about $7,500 starting out. So a bit pricey, but I mean, it's definitely unique. I haven't seen one before, so.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it erases those patterns and then builds another one and so on and so forth. It's kind of cool. So it looks like underneath the covers, it's Raspberry Pi and maybe another custom board, but I think that's kind of neat.
I really like the use inside Home Assistant. So I believe they have what they call tracks, which are just basically the designs that the ball will print in the sand. And you can use the media player component in Home Assistant to change what the pattern will be to draw on. So you can go then shuffle the tracks, shuffle, or go to the next track and it'll start drawing something new. So you could definitely automate, when someone walks into a room, change the track and start it drawing something new, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And I wonder if it just uses like music, so like highs and lows to change directions or something like that, and do that kind of thing.
Cool
but
too. Yeah, like an equalizer or something.
yeah, kind of that concept, right? And maybe one is go left, one is go right. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. That'd be kind of cool though. So
I wonder if you could do if you can upload your own photos to it, like sort of like an e-ink display, like it will print, what in the sand, it will print as best it can a photo.
Yeah, I don't know if I want that. Like it'd be kind of weird. Just have a picture of me drawn in sand by a ball, like, just my face or something. Like maybe giving 2 thumbs up or something. Like,
and it takes like an hour and a half for the image to complete, and you just can't be bothered watching it complete for that long.
yeah, exactly.
I'll add it to the shopping list. I may never get it, but it'll be on there somewhere.
Yeah. That's. I think the first 10,000 things that I have to buy first comes probably when I have that. It is cool though. It is cool. If you're done your shopping list or near the bottom, then have a look. It's kind of cool.
Some breaking changes out of this release is the moon sensor. The states are now lowercase and with underscores instead of spaces. This is just to allow it to be translated in the front end a bit easier. So if you're relying on the state of the moon in your automations, you'll just have to watch out for that. They are going to change in this release.
Yeah. Also, so the Insteon Mini Remote, basically it emits events now instead of showing it as a binary sensor. So depending on what you're doing, that may break a few things if you're using that.
That's actually handy. Do you use the Mini Remote with your Insteon setup?
No, I'm on a Lutron setup, so I do have.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I do use the remote with the Lutron. It's weird. So anybody else in living, and I'm not sure where it is. I'm not sure if it's just in where my region is, like in my municipality, or even if it's just in the Toronto area, or if it's in Ontario as a whole, or what. But for some reason, my bathroom doesn't have a light switch in it for light and exhaust. It's outside. And
that sounds like a legal restriction for some reason.
Yeah, but it's only my guest bathroom. My ensuite and my master bathroom has it.
Oh, okay, maybe not then.
Yeah, so it's weird. And my parents' house, it was something similar where they had light switches or like a light and an exhaust switch inside their guest bathroom, but then there was another light switch outside in the dining room that controlled the exhaust fan. And I was like, what? So I don't know why that exists, but it's they do some weird stuff. So, but basically I'm using the Lutron Pico remotes in the bathroom. So that now I have light switches.
Do you have those hooked up with Home Assistant?
Yeah. It's my Lutron setup is, yeah.
And do you use events or are they binary sensors as well?
They just show up as switches for me.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So,
of course, yeah.
So the remote doesn't actually show up. The remote, because it's technically a part of an extension, right? But the remote has like a little middle button thing, which my light switches don't have. So that actually comes in as a scene.
Right. Yes.
So yeah.
Another breaking change this week is the changes to Simply Safe. They've upgraded the API that Simply Safe component uses. The downside to that is that any CO, fire, flood, and last events are no longer reported as part of the alarm component in Home Assistant. So it is a breaking change. There is plans to have some of those come back as other sensors in a future release though. So if you do rely on any of those sensors in Home Assistant, you might want to hold off until they're brought back in a future release.
Yeah, and also SMAPI. So if you use SMAPI, basically it'll now show temperature as degrees Celsius instead of, I guess, centigrade? Or is it centigrade? I just assumed that was supposed to be centigrade. But wow, okay, that's a really weird unit to have started off with anyways.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I completely understand the purpose of this change.
And some noteworthy updates in this release. Big one for entity IDs. They can now be changed from the front end, which is exciting. So it's available for anything platform to support unique IDs. Example of this would be a Philips Hue integration. So now when you link up a Philips Hue bulb and you get that light_1 to ABC, you can now go in and change the entity ID in the UI. And then you can go ahead and update your automations easily. I wonder if this will have support for Z-Wave, because that's a big one. Like Z-Wave entity IDs can get messy very quickly.
Yeah.
But speaking of Z-Wave, there's a new update that I saw in the release notes. There is a special Z-Wave class called Protection Command class, which is used, one of the devices that uses it is a Fibaro key fob. Now you can update that from the Z-Wave control panel in Home Assistant. So this will be good for things like that may use security, maybe some future versions of locks or anything like that. Having this support now enables you to change settings for those devices within Home Assistant. You don't have to go into open Z-Wave control panel or anything like that or edit XML files. You can now do it from the Z-Wave control panel. So that's a good update too.
Yeah, that's cool. Also, turning on and off services as part of the core camera component has been added.
That might be cool for if you've got Netgear Arlo cameras, instead of, going and disabling the camera component from its certain way of doing it. Maybe you can just call the turn off service and it will know, okay, I'm a Netgear Arlo camera. I need to go and disable the box and do it that way.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool to make everything a little bit talk nicely together.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
So, Marius, tell us about the changes coming in 0.75 for Lovelace.
Yeah, there are quite a few interesting changes. One of the two most noticeable ones is add support for CSS imports, which would allow you to, just as you add JavaScript to your resources, will allow you to import CSS. Just keep in mind the changes might not apply to your Shadow DOM entities, but still will give some flexibility to people. A second big one is a new card. As with all the new cards, this will require you to read some documentation on it. But basically what this card is a conditional card, which would allow you to customize your interface based on the state of some other entities, not what you are displaying in the card. This previously used to be a hack. So it was a hack on the entity filter card, where you'd have a state for the list of entities that would give you the card or not, and then you'd enter the rest of the config in the card type, and then another entity there, and this would allow user to hide or show a specific card based on the state filter. It was a bit clunky, and it was basically a hack, and they wanted to get rid of this, so a new card was added to support the exact use case for the users.
Does that mean you could use a conditional card to display different options? So, for example, could I have a card block that is only displayed if a completely, like an input boolean is turned on or off?
Yeah, definitely. So you could have multiple states, maybe templated into one input boolean, and based on that, you'd display one or multiple cards. And this way, you could make your dashboard really dynamic to have it display what you need based on the states around you or the states that make your dashboard required in a certain way.
So what that means is we can start hiding things if we don't need to see them. So like maybe at certain things like notifications and stuff, you can almost use this as like a to-do list, right? Hey, I have stuff to do, and
yeah, it's keep in mind the notifications are not yet in Lovelace.
Yeah.
But for everything else, for example, if you have like a panel on the wall, and you pass by that specific tablet or whatever you have on the wall in different times of day. For example, in the morning, you prepare for work. You maybe want a list of events or calendar events that are going to happen at work, and then you want to hide that card away. And when the evening comes, maybe you want a playlist for the evening music to relax. So this could be done now.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is going to help me out with my rubbish bins, I think. Like, I don't need them displayed all the time. I can just have them displayed on Mondays only now. So that's cool.
Yeah.
It declutters things. So as long as you can be dynamic of what you're displaying and when, and based on the situation, you can reduce your dashboard to be, instead of a long scroll with the various states, just a shorter list with the most important things for you at that specific moment in time.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking of this almost as like a context-based kind of UI, right? So, hey, you know what? It's Monday and I've just come home from work. So here's all of the things, I can do. And then if we need to do other stuff, then we can do that outside of this card, right? Or outside of this scene, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine your girlfriend, for example, every time you leave the house, asks you if you turned off the, I don't know, ironing thing, or some other big consuming device, or you close the windows upstairs. Every time if you do this every time, then and you're required to take your phone out because maybe she doesn't trust your automation, then why not, when you take your phone out and you just left home and it's a specific moment in time and you leave for work, it just displays that specific dashboard on your phone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's exactly like how kind of Waze and all of these guys do their widgets, right? Hey, it's time to leave, right? And you only see that.
Yeah.
You only see that when you get it. So, or when it's about time to leave, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if for example, there's some software, like for example, you mentioned Waze, which might already have some traveling computation done for you and AI type of detecting when it should give you a notification. If you have a sensor for that, you could use that for a conditional card. So
yeah, actually, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about, because I've been seeing a lot of people doing some awesome stuff with Lovelace. Are they doing that with a picture glance card, or are they doing it like a just normal glance card or something?
So majority of people that are doing now kind of custom looking like cards are using picture elements. So picture elements in the first release was presented as a floor plan alternative or a lightweight floor plan alternative. But because of the flexibility and because it allows you to do elements like a free positioning on that specific card, and you have like a picture background, because of all of these elements, then it gives you a lot of flexibility. And people asked for certain type of elements, because now we have like views, cards, and now we also have elements. These elements were produced, and now they have a lot of flexibility to build stuff. And using those picture elements, people build, I don't know, like there's a tapped card and for beer stuff, and there's like a lot of other things that I've seen, including a plan card, a simulation of a glance card. And the guys from the community already built a website specific for this. So similar to the one for developers, where they showcase the internal cards with various configs. There's now a site called sharethelove.io, where people put in their specific picture elements cards, for example, with a specific config and percentages for positioning, and you just swap out the elements there with your own entities. And there you go. You have like a custom looking card with a default UI, just using.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's actually, a great site. I'm just looking at it now, and there's some really cool, like there's a greeter card, and there's a vacuum cleaner card by the looks of it as well. So yeah, there's some really cool examples on here. So that's a great little site to look at.
Another thing that is going to be available in the new release is row dividers for entities card. So people wanted to stack more elements inside the elements card, but as the list grows, you want some sort of separation, like segments in there. And now with the row dividers, you can add like pictures in there and really nice separators to make your longer list look a lot more presentable and easier to digest.
That's nice. So the row divider can actually have a picture.
Yep.
Ooh, nice.
That's neat.
Then they added also custom icon support. What this does is, for example, you have a glance card where you put a light, but you want that light to be to have a specific icon in that glance card, but a completely different icon, for example, on your floor plan picture elements card. And now you can do this. You can specify when you add the entity that it has to have this specific icon in this card instead of having the same icon everywhere.
Nice. Yeah, and it looks like there's a breaking change as well with this release. They're changing the way turning on and call services are used. Is that right?
Yes, you had tap action before, and that used like turn on for stuff that you didn't want to toggle. You just want to start. And because they are trying to make it extendable, they added the call services. So you not just turn on stuff, but you can call a specific service with parameters. And they collapsed this into the call service because it made more sense.
So now you can do other things, like you could have a script turn on, or maybe call a service like a shell script or something like that now.
Yes.
No, that is really neat.
There's some fixes. There's some fixes as well. For example, as they refactor a bit the entities card, it lost a bit of functionality. For example, like for climate entities, the row wasn't displaying the same information as previously did. These things got fixed, and now they're okay now again.
Ah, excellent. All right, Marius, tell us about custom cards in Lovelace as well.
Yeah, so custom cards have been added in Lovelace, I think, since the beginning, and they're quite a neat way for people to experiment and try new things before they make it into the default interface. One of the examples where the custom cards started to become useful and it made more sense is, for example, the first release of the entity filter card. That one had dynamic entities through a pattern that you could add into your configuration, but that one got removed because it added complexity that could have been complicated to maintain down the road, and that upset a few people. So the way it's recommended is that you start your a new card with a custom card and get feedback, and then build all certain things around it and fix things and make it stable, and then when you're happy with it, if it makes sense for the card, if it's popular enough and usable enough for everybody else, then you could try to submit this card to the Lovelace core.
Right, similar to how like a custom component would work. So if someone's made a custom component for Home Assistant, they sort of release it to the community first, and then when they're ready for it, then it can be released into the as a core component.
Exactly.
That's kind of neat.
For both custom cards and custom components, the members of the community, I think it was the Ludeus, and I can't remember who else now. Apologies for whoever the other name. So they added 2 repos to simplify for people looking for cards. There's like a custom cards repo and a custom components repo. Actually, organizations which have multiple repos, and then people can contribute their own cards and get the benefit of having everything in one place. For me, I still have some cards in my own repo. I have quite a few built now, built them based on either requests from the community or things that I found to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was a monster card. I think this one was instant hit after they removed the entity filter.
Yeah,
that's right. Everyone's loving the monster card.
Yeah, it allows quite a few things with filters, like complex things, like for example, getting a list of entities which have the battery level attribute above a certain percentage. So crazy things like that. It's available through the monster card. And then I have the alarm card, which is a spin-off from the original alarm dialogue in the previous UI, but now it's built specifically for Lovelace and simplified. And this also got some extra new features like auto arming and auto disarming based on the length of your code and things like this.
That's very cool.
I've actually just started using the manual alarm component as a way of doing another, like a manual override for presence detection. So that would be cool if, for example, if I get home and my battery is dead, I don't want, things to start going off to say, hey, there's an intruder in the place. So having the alarm control panel with Lovelace on the tablet, that would be a good use case, I think.
Yeah, indeed, it's quite a useful thing to have.
Yeah. What are you using now, Phil?
So I've got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth as my presence detection, and then I'm using the MQTT alarm control panel in Home Assistant. So instead of using like group.people as determining if people are home, there's also I'm using a binary sensor. So if the alarm panel is disarmed, it will assume that people are home, and then I can use that binary sensor to say, okay, people are home, instead of relying on just the presence detectors.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So it's this or that.
Yeah, exactly. So then when people get home, the alarm panel will automatically disable. So that also then, that also disables the alarm, which then triggers that binary sensor to say, okay, people are home. So there's now either two ways that people can be marked as home. They can either come in with a recognized device and join the Wi-Fi, or they can walk up to the tablet in the kitchen and punch in the security code to disarm the alarm.
Got it. Okay.
Nice. I also have then a card tracker. This was actually started to help with a custom component that Ludeus started to keep track of your custom cards and to be able to update the versions of your custom cards with one click.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah.
I'm using it on my production, and it's really a lifesaver. Once you have more than 3 cards, and if you get updates like bug fixes and things like this, and you don't want to get through all the trouble, you just click one button, everything updates, and then you refresh and you're done.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is very
okay,
cool.
I'm going to need to use that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just add it to the list.
Yeah, already adding it to the list now.
That's fine.
And one of the last components released, which I released this week, is the thermostat card.
There's actually a lot of love for this on Reddit. It looked really cool.
Yeah, it was a requested card a while back based on a CodePen snippet, and I didn't have time at it right then, and someone from the community picked it up. They did a first version of it just to load it and to have it integrate. And then as I had a bit more experience from the days when I patched the generic thermostat, I integrated properly with the states and everything else in Home Assistant, with a few exceptions. Like there's still some controls which need to be integrated, which are in the to-do list. And now I also added after refactoring support for 2 set points if you have things which have a low and a high temperature, and added big tapping buttons to be usable on mobile, and released the first version now.
Yep.
I use it on my production now, and I like it as well.
That's awesome. And
compared to previous one where you had the thermostat like in this like form-looking older style, this is an improvement, at least for me.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks like it'll be a nice visual aspect too, right? So.
Yeah, there will still be people which will just rely on their automation, which would not be that interested. But many people still like to check their thermostat every now and then and fiddle with it.
Yeah, tinker with it. I don't feel like I know I've automated it, but I still feel cold. Let's just bump it up a little bit.
Yeah, the next one for me, it was requested and it's in the works. It's animated weather card. There was also a CodePen with the card which was suggested on Discord by the guys, and this one's also really, really cool. If you have time, just have a look at it. I'll give you the link after it. For example, if you have like a storm, it puts lightning bolts and then it actually shakes the card. If there's wind, there's
really?
That's cool.
Yeah, if there's wind, there's like leaves flying and things like this. So it's
that's
really
awesome.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. That is awesome.
I really want it now.
I need another weekend just to sort out all these new custom cards and everything that I'm seeing on.
Yeah. It's funny because that's kind of what's kept me from turning on Lovelace, right? Is basically I want to spend time and I want to do it all like nicely, and I want to get stuff like this in there, right? So
there's a new website to help you out also if you feel like overwhelmed. I know Frank built a new website to it's HA Awesome or something like that. I can't remember now the URL top of my head, but he built this website where he curated a list of things which are stable enough and useful. People, if they're unsure what to pick, can just take that list and then start from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave a link to that in the show notes. That's actually a good resource as well.
That is fantastic. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Marius. How long have you been using Home Assistant, and how long have you been doing HA as a whole?
Yeah, so I started with Home Assistant, I think, in 2016. Actually, I was researching something for a student. We are having a program at work where we're helping kids learn programming stuff, and I wanted to do something a bit more cool, and I asked him to research something on the home automation side of things, where you have a bit of hardware and such. And we ended up from the research going with Home Assistant because it seemed simple enough, but also have the programming element to it. So we chose that. And then after we finished the program, it piqued my interest so much. I said, hey, I'm going to look for myself only now. So I'll take this and I'll dig in. So I think around May last year, it was the first time I actually built a repo for myself, a private repo because of passwords and stuff until I got used to secrets. And then started to do a bit of documentation patching. And then late November, when I got more and more used to Has.io, I started to do some patching on some add-ons in, I think it was a Best Libres repo. And then as winter came, in December, I was here, I started to use the thermostat because I had a dumb thermostat on the wall and I decided to make it smarter. So I built my own using a SON-off relay and hooked it into the generic thermostat component. And that had slight problems here and there. And I said, hey, this is just code, so why not help out? So I dug in and did a few pull requests and they got merged in. So I got hooked to helping out.
That's cool. It's funny.
And now you're hooked on Home Assistant.
Well, exactly. It's funny because there's a lot of people that kind of get into that dev motion exactly because of that, right? And it's hey, I contributed this one time and then I was hooked, and then I'm gonna keep contributing to different things, right?
Yeah, it's been quite a few things since then. The first bigger thing was with Crusader. So Crusader was the one that was discussing with me regarding Has.io interface in February, I think, and he did a lot of refactoring, and I just helped with some usability, a bit of code here and there, and we did the redesign back then of the Has.io tab with the new now add-on view and such. So that was another cool thing to be part of. And then I took a break. I went skiing and such. And in May, I went back to see that the new add-on was getting a bit more traction. Actually, it was not an add-on at the time. It was just the software, Zigbee to MQTT.
Yeah.
So I decided to get involved to get the add-on a bit more active because I had a stick like a year and a half ago and was just sitting there waiting to be used. And first time this was having documentation and it was looking quite well. It had a few forks, and I contacted each of the owners and I said, hey, I want to join on just one of the forks and try to make it nicer for people. I got involved in documentation, as I usually end up doing. And it started to take off. People just started to contribute to just this one fork, and documentation got better, more devices got added, and then we got an add-on for Has.io. So now it's looking good. And
yeah, that's awesome. It's funny you say that I actually received a USB debugger today for my Zigbee to MQTT, so I'll be soon joining that repo as well and hopefully contributing back some new devices.
Nice. Really, really nice.
Yeah.
And
how are you finding it? Are you finding any delays or anything like that using it?
No, so one of the main reasons I looked into this was there were actually delays when using the Xiaomi buttons. Because of the Xiaomi gateway and the way the setup works, you'd have sometimes up to 1 second of delay when pressing the button until you had an event in Home Assistant. So I optimized now. I fixed some of the problems, but with this, I'm trying to reduce the latency because now it's directly in Home Assistant. And the only thing that I've noticed so far is that when you have, for example, a sensor that doesn't have enough variation, so the value doesn't change that much, like temperature, you'd get less reports than you'd had with the Xiaomi gateway.
Right, okay.
Besides that, there's no change. And even if with that, if you actually have something like going, the temperature varies, then you'd get the reports. You're not going to miss the high temperature variation. It's just that you don't get the regular reports as often as you'd had with the old Xiaomi gateway.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
That's not the biggest deal to me, at least, but that's perfect.
Yeah. And better to have one super Zigbee network than multiple little Zigbee networks
exactly.
as well.
So, I mean, getting on my little soapbox here, it's terrible for I hate the fact I have to buy like 100 different hubs to do the exact same thing, right? And B is, I'm causing a lot of interference. I'm doing a lot of that stuff. So if I can have one resilient network, why don't I use that instead of having 4 kind of disparate networks that do the exact same thing, right?
Especially when they're all communicating on the same technology. So in my house, I've got the Xiaomi hub, Philips Hue bridge, and a Lightify gateway, all talking Zigbee. So 3 Zigbee networks that isn't talking to each other. I'm hoping that I can get them all working on the one Zigbee network.
Yeah. So for me, I've actually held off on buying different things like the IKEA trad-free bulbs, and I've wanted to buy a Xiaomi water leak sensor, a couple of things like that, but because I need the extra hub, it's not to me. It's not worth it.
Yeah, something extra you have to plug in.
Yeah, actually, I have the water leak from Xiaomi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Oh, perfect. I might actually get those now and then. Yeah, because last I checked on, because I have been watching this project, but the last I checked, that wasn't directly on the certified list, and this is before it was kind of starting to get unified and all of that stuff, right? This is when the project first kind of came out, but so I was like, okay, I'll kind of keep watching it, and then I guess I hadn't for a little bit, and now it's so much better, and I want it.
So what are you using to run Home Assistant? Do you have a Raspberry Pi set up with anything?
Yeah, so my main production is running on a Raspberry Pi 3 with a SSD connected on USB, and that's running Resin OS still. Because I haven't had the time to make the USB work on HasOS, and that's running my production. I also received from my colleagues at work, which were nice enough to get me a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, and that's running HasOS, and it's running it for my dev environment where I test things, I test long-running things, I test memory consumption things, so and that's running really well as well.
Nice.
That's awesome. So why the external USB drive?
So for me, the external USB was a must because I run one of the add-ons that I run is InfluxDB, and if you want to write a lot of metrics, and even with a good card, there's a chance that you will wear it out. Mm-hmm. And with an SSD, it's no longer that probable that you're gonna have a failure. And even though I'm not winning that much speed, it's for stability reasons that I'm going the USB route instead of the SD card.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, nice.
I also had an Orange Pi, which I'm also using I used to have that for dev purposes, but I switched with the 3B Plus as I received it. But that's going to probably go at a friend or something to run HasIO as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's great.
So if you're using HasOS or HasIO, what would be your favorite add-ons that you've got running there?
Yeah, so
apart from the Zigbee to MQTT, of course.
Yes, I'm running as majority. I'm running a DuckDNS add-on, but this is just to update dynamically the DNS because I'm not using a DuckDNS DNS. I'm using just a CNAME to that one from a bot domain.
Yeah.
Then I'm using Nginx from Best Libre. And the reason I'm using this one is because it has multiple vhost support directly in the basic configuration of the add-on, which makes it super easy to have multiple vhosts instead of understanding actual Nginx configuration. And the reason for multiple vhosts is that once you add more add-ons like Grafana or Tasmo Admin or whatever other add-on that exposes the web UI, then you want to have a panel on the left side of your Home Assistant. And if you have your Home Assistant running HTTPS, then those add-ons add-ons, if they're running as panels, then they have to be on HTTPS and they have to have correct certificates. So probably you want to also have a subdomain pointing to those to have the correct certificate. And this just makes life easier. I'm using Nginx and then a certbot, which works perfectly with this Nginx from Best Libre. And I just have everything configured there. I haven't touched it in a while.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So besides Nginx, I have the SSH add-on. Now, for SSH, I'm using this besides just going in and checking stuff and restarting and doing basic troubleshooting when required, which is far less now that I have Has.io than previously. I also use it instead of the Samba add-on using SSHFS. So SSHFS, what it does, it allows you to mount via SSH on your local laptop a remote volume from your box. And this way you can use local editors to edit files like you do with Samba, but everything is on an encrypted channel like SSH.
Ah, nice.
Interesting. Yeah, and I was just looking at that. So I guess it's made by the Linux Fuse organization. That's kind of neat.
And then, of course, Grafana and InfluxDB. I'm using these for basic troubleshooting. I mean, I wouldn't start a new installation without this available. It's just a lifesaver for troubleshooting. You add stuff in, you forget about it. Maybe that just grows your memory over time and you're not noticing it. And then all of a sudden your Pi starts hogging and CPU goes like max, and then you don't know what happened and since when. And then you go back, you troubleshoot using Grafana, which saves a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I agreed. It's a very, very good troubleshooting tool. My Grafana install broke a while ago, and I just didn't bother fixing it. I guess I should look at it again. But even if you don't look at it, it's good to have just running in the background, right? And just, you never know when you're
going to get the metrics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun because it tends to trip up a lot of support people. So I had a support case open with Ecobee a while ago, and I'm like, hey, why is this working this way? They're like, oh, this is kind of how it works, and because essentially, like, let's say you say, hey, I want the house to be like 23 degrees by 6 a.m. Well, great. It'll actually preemptively start that. And I was like, man, why is my house getting so hot in the winter, right? And it's like to the point where I'd be waking up. So at like 5, well, it preemptively turns it on. So whatever. So, and I was like, okay, so interesting. So, and then at that point, I was plotting a lot of my temperature data. Yeah. And then I was like, well, so if I look here and then they're like, why do you have this information? I'm like, don't worry about it. Right? And yeah, but it's interesting. So it is actually very good for troubleshooting as well.
For my Grafana, I also have an alerting. So I had set thresholds, and I have alerting, which at the moment goes to a Slack bot. I'm hoping I can move it to a Discord message, but that's also very useful.
So it's like if something reaches over a certain threshold, you'll get an alert to say, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah, I usually have it for CPU. Like if there's no data for a certain sensor, you can do alerts. So if there's data over a certain threshold or under a certain threshold, you can do all kinds of alerts based on this. And depending on the integration, I have them sent to a specific Slack organization.
Yep.
That's neat.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and the last major add-on that I use is Tasmo Admin. This has been really, really awesome because I think Sonoff are quite nice devices, especially that I use one for my thermostat. So what this add-on helps me do is monitor, for example, firmware versions on my Sonoffs, upgrade the versions as well. And it allows me to track, for example, signals for various sonoffs.
Oh, that's cool. So it's an add-on that allows you to make sure that all the different sonoffs are up to the right version and all that from within Home Assistant.
Yes, and it's super
awesome add-on.
useful. Yeah. So
yeah.
if you're having troubles with your sonoffs and you're not sure if it's the signal or something like that, have a look at this add-on, and it will save you lots of time of troubleshooting, because you can just check if maybe there's an older version on that device that is causing you problems, or maybe you forgot to upgrade, or maybe it's in a corner where it has weak signal, and every time a neighbor comes in and introduces some interference, it causes it to misbehave.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great add-on for everyone then.
Yeah, that's handy.
So what sort of components are you using in your smart home at the moment? Have you got anything else apart from the Xiaomi gateway setup, like a Philips Hue or anything like that?
Nothing extra. I'm using just the presence detection for my mobile phone and through the Wi-Fi router, and Bluetooth detection. I also have the sonoffs, which are now integrated easier with the new auto discovery. But besides this, I have not much else, because I haven't had any previous devices that I had to plug in. And when I did my research, I looked for the most affordable but also stable setup that I could find. And I decided that the Xiaomi sensors and switches and buttons and everything they have in their ecosystem is really cheap enough for starting with, but also stable enough. And it's also good looking.
Yeah, I'm really surprised how good looking the Xiaomi stuff actually is. Like, you see on the pictures when you're buying it online, you're like, oh, it looks big and ugly, but then you get it, and they feel really premium, and they're very, like, the sensors at least are very tiny, like in the palm of your hand. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the quality that you get for such a good price.
Yeah, I have the sensors, I have the door window sensors, I have motion sensors, the water leak sensor. I even bought a lock from them just to test it out.
Yeah.
It's it looks and it feels and it works quite nicely. I haven't integrated it with Home Assistant yet because I haven't mounted it on any door. It's a bit different mechanism. We usually have here a multi-point lock, and this is just a single point lock, so it doesn't really fit.
Right.
But it's a good experiment to
that
try.
Is neat. Yeah. So what are some of the, some of your favorite automations, some of the routines that you run? Well, out of all of your stuff, what do you think is the coolest, or what stands out to you the most, kind of thing?
So, of course, the first favorite ones would be the ones around the lights. I have a automation for moving sun position and light. So whenever sun is under a certain position, then if someone moves in an area, the lights turn on.
Yep.
It's basic stuff like that. Then I have automation for turning all lights off. And these are usable also when presence detection senses that no one's home. If any lights are on, it just turns them off.
Right,
but also I have this tied on to a button. So, for example, you go to the bathroom middle of the night, lights turn on along the way. When you come back, you can just tap a button, or in my case, actually, I have a cube which has a certain position for this, and that one triggers the lights out.
The Xiaomi Cube?
Yeah, that's
nice.
It's the most awesome controller for people that want multiple things tied to it. And what makes it awesome is that, for example, if your partner is sensible to sound, for example, even clicking might wake them up.
Mm-hmm.
That one you just turn, and based on the accelerometer, you get a new state, and it can use that to trigger stuff without making any noise at all.
Wow, that's cool. So what happens if you were to accidentally roll it down the room? Would things just go crazy?
No, I haven't actually added actions to turning, just to flipping. And flipping, it's quite nicely tuned. So if you drop it on the floor, it will not trigger flipping, because that has to be from a specific level to a completely fixed position at 90 degrees or 180 degrees, and it has to stay there for a bit. So
that's good.
yeah, people have been using it for example, the turn rotation to dim lights.
Okay.
I've seen that being done.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, maybe I do need to get one of these.
Yeah, it's a really neat multi-controller. I have, for example, you can just double tap with it, or you can flip 180, flip 90, or you can shake it in the air. The one when you shake it in the air, that's the most silent. You don't have to tap or rotate on the surface. You just shake it and it just things. So for really, really low sound situations.
Okay, that's really so. I've always seen this, and I never really like knew what it was, and I didn't really bother looking at it. That's like controller. Okay, I figured it had like, buttons and stuff underneath, but I guess this is just complete freeform. That's amazing.
Yeah, and you can bind them into anything. It's one of the things that it's related also to the release notes earlier on. One of the disadvantages at the moment is that the sensor that you get out of the cube in Home Assistant through the MQTT doesn't yet have events. So doing automation, you have to actually add automation based on MQTT messages instead of using the actual component that is being added through the discovery.
Right.
I'll probably look into patching this in the future to make it work like everything else with events.
Yeah, well, once that happens, I might have to go out and buy one.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking the same thing. You know what? More than anything, it's just cool. I have zero good use case for it, but I want it.
Yeah, other automations that I have are, for example, for the thermostat. If we leave home, it automatically goes to away mode. When we come back, it automatically gets from away mode off. And also, there's another automation where at a certain time of day during work days, it sends us a push notification with actionable buttons where you can turn on heating before going home. So,
oh, nice. So it'll say, "Hey, do you want me to turn the heater on today?"
Yep, it says a nicer message because I have this. I'm crazy of stuff not being repeated. So to be too robot-like, I have quite a few sensors which have multiple messages saying the same thing in different way. And then every time I call on automation, I use it with a random sensor, and then that one gets a random message from the specific list for that specific action.
Ah, right, that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have another automation which I use, and this one is in combination with the UI sometimes. So I have notifications for people arriving home or leaving home, but these are not turned on by default because it got annoying to get told like hello and goodbye every time you arrive and leave.
Yeah.
So the way I'm using this is, for example, if I'm on a business trip, I activate the one for which tells me if my girlfriend is getting home or not. And when she arrives home, I get a notification like, hey, she got home. And I don't have to bug her like, hey, are you home? Are you safe? I just know. It's for both. It's more convenient.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Marius, and thank you very much for all your documentation of Lovelace. We really appreciate that, and all your work with Zigbee to MQTT as well. Looking forward to getting you that Xiaomi Cube events integrated as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.